The cold did not care who you were. It did not care what side you were on. During the Second World War, winter became a silent weapon that killed as surely as steel. Yet millions of families stayed alive through months of darkness, hunger, and bone-deep frost, using survival methods that history barely whispers about anymore. This is not comfort talk. This is war-tested survival, earned the hard way, and it still matters today. Welcome back to War-Tested Survival. Pull in close. This story was forged in ice. By the middle years of the war, fuel was scarce, supply lines were shattered, and cities went dark. Families were trapped in homes with little heat and less food. Frostbite crept across walls, windows ice shut from the inside. The people who survived learned fast that comfort was a luxury and warmth was strategy. They stopped fighting winter head-on and started working with it. Homes were sealed like ships at sea. Cracks were packed with cloth, paper, and even mud. Curtains were layered thick and kept drawn day and night. Rooms were abandoned on purpose, shrinking living space to trap body heat where it mattered most. Families slept together not for comfort, but survival. Heat was shared like rations. This was not misery. This was intelligence under pressure. Firewood was rare. Coal was rationed or gone. So families turned inward and downward. Heat rises, so they lived low. Basements, ground floors, and inner rooms became shelters. Walls were lined with anything that slowed airflow. Furniture was repositioned to block drafts. Even doors were padded. Clothing became architecture. People wore layers constantly, even indoors. Wool was king. Cotton was a mistake. Scarves stayed on. Hats never came off. Feet were wrapped before sleep. Cold floors were deadly, so cardboard, straw, and folded cloth were laid down like primitive insulation. One forgotten trick was controlled cold exposure. Families avoided overheating when heat was available. Sweat meant danger. Wet skin in winter was a death sentence. They stayed slightly cool on purpose, preserving dry layers and energy. This was thermal discipline. And it worked. Calories were heat. That truth kept people alive. Food was chosen not for flavour, but for burn time. Thick soups, stews and porridges dominated because liquid carried warmth deep into the body. Fat was treasured more than sugar. A spoon of grease could mean the difference between shivering and sleeping. Meals were timed around cold exposure. People ate before going outside and again before sleep. Nighttime digestion helped keep body temperature steady. Nothing was wasted. Bones became broth. Peels were dried. Stale bread was reborn as thickened meals. Warm drinks were constant, not luxury drinks. Plain hot water mattered. Heat itself was nourishment. Even hunger was managed carefully. People learned that eating small amounts regularly prevented the crash that came from long gaps. Survival was about rhythm. Darkness was everywhere. Power grids failed, blackouts were enforced, candles and oil lamps were rationed or, handmade. Wicks were crafted from cloth. Oils came from anything that could burn. But light was not just about seeing. It was about morale. Families gathered around a single flame every evening. Stories were told. Hands were kept busy, repairing clothes, sharpening tools, preparing food for the next day. Stillness was dangerous. Idleness invited despair. This is something modern survival forgets. The mind freezes before the body. People mark days with routine, wake times, meal times, chores. Even small rituals kept time moving forward. Hope stayed alive because structure stayed alive. Night was the hardest test. Beds were rebuilt for warmth. Mattresses were layered with paper, straw, or extra fabric underneath to block cold rising from the floor. Blankets were stacked heavy, not wide. Tucking mattered more than coverage. People slept clothed, sometimes fully dressed. Breath froze in the air. Windows were cracked just enough to prevent deadly moisture build-up. Condensation was an enemy. Dampness invited sickness. Children slept between adults. Elderly were placed closest to heat sources. No one slept alone unless necessary. Body heat was communal property. This was not romance. This was survival math. Nothing modern, nothing fancy. Hot bricks wrapped in cloth became bed warmers. Heated stones were carried in pockets during outdoor work. Metal tools were avoided with bare skin. Frostbite stole fingers fast. Snow was melted for water, but never eaten raw. That drained body heat. Clothing was aired even in freezing air because dry fabric saved lives. Boots were dried slowly, never rushed, to prevent cracking and failure. Every object had multiple uses. Every habit had a reason. These families did not survive because they were tougher. They survived because they adapted. They understood that survival is quiet. It is discipline. It is preparation without panic. They respected winter instead of challenging it. The methods were simple, repeatable, and brutally effective. No technology required. Just knowledge passed hand to hand, generation to generation. And then, when the war ended, much of that knowledge faded. Modern systems feel permanent until they are not. Power grids fail, supply chains break, winters still come hard. The past left us a manual written in frost and patience. If you listen closely, it is still speaking. These were not soldiers. These were families. And they endured one of the coldest chapters in human history with grit, intelligence, and quiet resolve. That is war-tested survival. If this story lit something in you, if you value the knowledge that history tried to bury, make sure you subscribe to War-Tested Survival and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. The old lessons still work, and remembering them might matter more than ever.